Iran angiveligt beriger uran på et, efter eget udsagn, industrielt plan. Hvis ikke Iran efterlever FN's krav, venter der nye sanktioner oven i de økonomiske sanktioner EU og FN allerede har indført. Og det er der ikke mange, der forventer, at Iran gør. Og så kan det være endnu et skridt imod den militære aktion, som USA i flere omgange har truet Iran med.
They sponsor Hezbollah. They encourage a radical brand of Islam. Imagine how difficult this issue would be if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Ved siden af truslerne om angreb kører der et diplomatisk spil på højt plan. I næste uge mødes iranske og amerikanske diplomater for første gang i 27 år, dog for at tale om sikkerheden i Irak. Og så er der Israel, der før har handlet på egen hånd. I 1981 blev Saddam Husseins atomreaktor ramt af israelske bomber, og i januar var der rygter om, at israelerne havde lignende planer om at slå til mod Irans atomanlæg.
Welcome to Deadline, Gary Schaub. Tell me, what do we exactly know about the nuclear capabilities of Iran? Because there's a lot of speculation here.
Well, essentially what we know is that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon presently, unless, of course, they've bought a weapon whole on the black market. What they do have is the capability to enrich uranium to a high standard so that one day it could be used in a weapon.
So, but how likely is it that there is some kind of hidden program that we don't know of?
Not very likely. There might be some small components out in the hinterland somewhere. However, what we know is that in 2002, a covert or clandestine aspect of the program was discovered by the IAEA, and that came to light and has been subject to inspection since. It's very unlikely that they had two covert or clandestine programs running simultaneously. So we probably have a pretty good idea what their main facilities are.
But then the question is what their intentions are, I guess, because that's the more dubious point. What do we know about their intentions?
Well, Iran has a grand strategy that is essentially to increase their regional influence, both in the Persian Gulf and throughout the Middle East as a whole. And their intentions with that regard are to, well, on the nuclear side, to essentially remove or replace their reliance upon oil and have a larger energy market that they can service with both nuclear power and also maybe highly enriched uranium sales to other countries that have reactors. That's in the long term. In the short term, if they went ahead and tried to attain nuclear weapons, what could they do with them actually? Well, that's a very good question.
But then the problem is, or the discussion is, whether it's possible to stop this nuclear program with the military solutions, to bomb those nuclear plants. What do you think about that? Is it possible, basically, to take the Iranians out of the game by bombing?
It is for a few years at least. There are a number of key nodes in their system. They have the enrichment facilities at Natanz. They have a yellow cake facility that they have at Isfahan. And finally, they have a heavy water reactor and also plutonium production facility at Iraq. And those three key nodes are very vulnerable to air power. So they can be taken out through airstrikes if necessary, if someone deems it appropriate.
But would the U.S. get anywhere with that? You say it can take them a few years back, but does it mean it's not a very sophisticated program at the end of the day?
Well, a nuclear program does not necessarily have to be very sophisticated. Once you cleared certain technical hurdles, it's possible to get a bomb out of that program. And so a few years hesitation would be a breathing space, perhaps, for other things to happen in the Middle East, perhaps for a regime change to occur in Iran, different leadership with different intentions. However, that is probably unlikely to occur within that time frame.
But is that what the Americans are hoping for?
Well, they had been hoping, along with the EU3, by asking Iran or demanding of Iran that they stop enrichment, that they would not gain the technological prowess that they apparently now have. Last week, on a short-term or short notice inspection by the IAEA, they found that at the Natanz facility, that the Iranians had 1,300 centrifuges working simultaneously, which was a vaster capability than they had before, and demonstrated that they had overcome many of the technological hurdles that the U.S. and the EU had hoped that by not enriching that they would not be able to address and solve.
But then one thing is the EU3, one thing is the US, but then there's a position of Israel, because they're far closer to the heat of the Mideast. Would a bombing of Israel be a possibility?
Bombing by Israel?
Bombing by Israel, sorry, yeah.
Well, that is a possibility. My understanding of Israeli policy declarations have been that once the Iranians had crossed a red line of mastering the enrichment process, that they would then take the policy into their own hands, as it were. So it might be the upcoming weeks might be fairly interesting with regard to Israel and Iran.
But Israel, and if Israel is bombing Iran, that would cause a major political and diplomatic crisis, I guess. Is it really on the agenda?
I hope not. But it's very possible. If any one country has anything to fear from an Iran with a nuclear weapons capability, it is Israel. Primarily because not only can Israel be touched by Iran's ballistic missiles that they have, although making a weapon small enough to fit on top of a missile is a different technological hurdle that they have not yet crossed. They also have very good relations with terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, and which apparently they finance and control and can turn on or off to a large extent as they desire. And I'm sure that the Israelis are afraid of a truck bomb, for example, being nuclear or perhaps a dirty bomb.
Yeah, because that's one of the interesting questions is what's going to happen if Iran is being bombed. I mean, one thing is what's going to happen to the nuclear plants. Another thing is what's going to happen politically and diplomatically. Iran is already a troublemaker in the region. How much worse can it get in case they are bombed?
Well, that's a very good question, because what you look at is that they have limited capability to cause trouble conventionally with their conventional militaries. They could, for example, try to mine the Persian Gulf and put the stops on other tankers coming through with oil, as has almost happened back during the Iran-Iraq War, 1987-1988. And there's a solution for that. That's reflagging those vessels and having minesweepers come in and clear those out. That's one way in which they could cause trouble. Of course, now with that particular scenario, they are heavily reliant upon the oil economy, and so they would also be hurting themselves quite significantly there.
But I guess there's a situation in Iraq, there's a situation going on in Gaza now, where Iran, I guess, could turn up the heat much more than they do today if they're offended by the Israelis or the US.
Well, that's true. It seems as though, from a lot of analyses I've seen, that was their intent last summer, to demonstrate that they had other ways of reaching out and touching the West or touching Israel and modulating the way the larger Middle East dynamic was occurring.
So all in all, do you think it's a wise solution to bomb Iran?
My personal opinion is no. It might set back the program for a few weeks or a few years, technically. However, it would not change the intentions. In fact, actually, it would probably validate those who say that having a bomb would be a rather effective deterrent against the Americans. After all, the United States went after Saddam Hussein's Iraq prior to Saddam acquiring a nuclear weapon. However, with regard to North Korea, the United States has not acted in the same way, and in fact has been rather reliant upon multilateral diplomacy throughout the past number of years to deal with the North Korean situation. So they might see a bomb as the ultimate deterrent.
Thank you very much for joining.
Well, thank you.
Vi hører næsten dagligt om indvandrere, der bor her i Danmark, men vi hører meget sjældent om de danskere, der især i starten af forrige århundrede valgte at søge lykken i andre lande, som for eksempel Argentina. De danskere boede også i enklaver og dyrkede dansk sprog og kultur, og det sker den dag i dag selv 100 år